A group of heroes is headed into the dark forest on a mission to liberate their home. They all wield powerful weapons known as regalia, weapons that grant them power far greater than what any human is capable of, so they are fully prepared to defeat the dark beasts in the forest. However, the second they arrive, their driver gets yeeted into oblivion by one of the dark beasts. Everyone else springs into action, and their leader, Stefan, orders everyone to get in formation as they make a charge straight into the dark beast den. The cutlass user begins slicing up all the monsters in his path with his whirlwind technique, and Stefan uses his blade to slice the heads off a giant snake monster he was fighting. However, even with its head severed, the snake keeps trying to bite Stefan, but at the last second, Alicia is able to stop it by piercing its eye with her sword to finish it off. So far, the team has been doing pretty well, and now that all the weak monsters in the area have been dealt with, the team ventures deeper into the cave to track down the Beast Lord of the South. They eventually arrive at the center of the cave and come face to face with Clevites of the Moonlight. And you know it's going to be bad when the monster has an aura farming entrance. Everyone can feel the intensity coming from the beast, but Stefan is confident that he and his team can overcome anything with the power of friendship. Never mind, friendship isn't going to save them here. After seeing Clevites paint the wall with Stefan's blood, I'd be questioning whether being a hero is even worth it. But the tank seems to think he can do better, so he jumps into the air to attack it, but he's almost immediately beheaded midair. The others are finally starting to realize that they don't stand a chance in a direct battle, but it's too late for them to retreat or regroup because Clevites has begun picking them off one by one with its tail. The others are confused because they can't figure out how Clevites is getting to them so quickly, but Alicia realizes that the tail attacks are coming from their shadows, so she tells everyone to jump to create some distance from the shadow. Thanks to her quick thinking, she manages to parry the beast's attack and survive, but the others aren't so lucky. One of the surviving heroes jams his spear into the ground to summon an earth golem, but even the ground here is under the control of Clevis, so the hero can't continue his golem, and several tail spikes emerge from the ground and slice him up. The lance user tries to charge forward and overpower Clevites, but while the dude is fighting for his life over here, Clevites is casually wondering how things as weak as humans managed to get into his lair. He then finishes off the rest of the heroes, so the only one left alive is Alice, who has been flying around with her sword to avoid getting hit. She eventually manages to get close enough to Clevites' face to land a good hit on him, but even her strongest attack barely leaves a scratch on Clevites. Meanwhile, Clevites is still deep in thought because he can't fathom the stupidity that led humans to attack his land when he hasn't had beef with them for over 1,000 years. But if they are going to keep bothering him like this, then he's going to need to come up with a more permanent solution. But first he has to deal with Alice, so he slashes her limbs off and sends her falling to her doom. A little while later, Clevites crash lands in the human kingdom, and he's here with vengeance on his mind. He was perfectly fine leaving the human kingdom alone as long as they had minded their business, but they just had to go trying to conquer his land. From what the heroes said before the fight, they were sent to fight by the king of Haydn, so he's going to need to have a word with him about this. The kingdom's archers are alerted to the threat, so they show up and take aim at Clevites. But unsurprisingly, those arrows do absolutely no damage. But despite the clear power difference, they continue attacking like it's going to do something. Clevites is just here for the king, so he was initially going to ignore all the other humans, but since they are attacking him now, he slaughters them all on his way to the castle. The castle guards begin prepping the rest of their defenses and aim their catapults at Clevites, but their weapons still have no effect on him, so Clevites rips through the castle walls with ease. Inside the castle, one of the guards goes to warn the king of Clevites' attack, but the king already heard all the crashing sounds, so he pretty much knows what happened. The heroes he sent must have failed to kill Clevites because the weapons of Haydn weren't strong enough yet. He realizes that Clevites is most likely here for him, so there would be no point in fleeing now because Clevites would just hunt him down. However, even if he is going to end up dying, the king wants to seal off the forge so the flames of Haydn are never extinguished. Meanwhile, Clevites is outside, and he is wondering why the humans here are so pitiful compared to the heroes that attacked him. At first he thought it might have been some kind of special training, but after the castle's guards fire Haydn metal ballistas at him, he realizes that their strength was in their weapons. Thinking back, even though it didn't do much damage, the sword Alicia used to slash his horn actually left a mark which shouldn't have been possible. Even if humans are nothing more than insects to him, an insect with a stinger can still be dangerous, so Clevites plans to get to the bottom of this. At the same time, down in the depths of the castle, the king goes to check on the forge of Haydn, but suddenly the walls around him begin to shake, so he realizes Clevites must be nearby and hurriedly seals the forge off. Moments later, Clevites rips the roof off the castle, and as soon as he spots the king, he calls him out. The king tries to act unfazed and tells Clevites that he has no right to speak to him like that. But Clevites tells the king to watch his tone because if he wanted to, he could wipe out all the humans in an instant. And not just the people of Haydn either, he could go after the people of the neighboring kingdoms as well. He could have killed the king by now. But even if he did that, another king would eventually pop up and disturb Clevites' land again. So he is giving the king of Haydn one chance to explain himself. He wants to know why he ordered those heroes to attack him. But instead of actually explaining the reason, the king practically spits in Clevites' face, saying a beast like him could never understand human ambition. Clevites has heard all he needs to hear, so he slices the king's head off and begins making plans to wipe all humans from the face of the earth. However, as he is walking out of the destroyed city, he comes across a baby crying after its mother had been crushed under some falling debris. Clevites feels no sympathy for it whatsoever, so he decides to keep walking. But then the baby's mother calls out to him and asks Clevites to save her baby. Clevites is a bit stunned by the mother's bold request, so he reminds her that he was the one who brought ruin to this kingdom, and he has even decided to wipe out all humans, so why would he want to save a human child? The mother understands his point, but regardless of what the adults may have done to deserve Clevites' wrath, she insists that the baby has done nothing to deserve such a fate. Clevites doesn't see the point in arguing about the baby's innocence since all humans are the same to him, but he's willing to play along, so he asks the mother if she can prove the baby's worth to him. The mother knows she won't be able to prove anything to Clevites, especially since she's going to die soon, but she swears that if Clevites agrees to save the baby, he will eventually discover its worth on his own. The mother dies shortly after and Clevites walks off completely unfazed, but he does end up coming back for the baby, so the mother's speech must have gotten through to him. He still isn't entirely sure if it's a good idea to take this baby, but compared to his long lifespan, a human child's life is barely noticeable, so he is willing to look after it for the sake of curiosity. In the land of Ethia, there are 5 humanoid races, the first of which are the Duns, a kingdom of people with large numbers and great skill in architecture. The next are the Orgites, a kingdom of people who excel in hunting and medicine. The Sladens, aquatic people skilled in swimming and fishing. The Benti, barbaric people who are strong individually, but couldn't work together even if their lives depended on it. And finally, there's the kingdom of Haydn, or rather, there was the kingdom of Haydn because it's gone now. They were the oldest of the humanoid races and had great skill when it came to forging weapons, which is how the blades of Haydn were made. There is a lot more to the world than just Ethia, but beyond the continent's borders, it is surrounded by darkness on all sides. This darkness is where the dark beasts live and the 4 dark beast lords, one of which is Clevites, so humans have never set foot outside Ethia. Back at Clevites' cave, he brought the baby back with him, and after scaring all the beasts to make sure none of them eat him, he curls up next to the child to rest, but now he's not sure what to do with him. He can give him some of his energy to keep his strength up so he doesn't have to worry about dying anytime soon, but the baby is currently covered in poop. Clevites did not sign up to deal with this, so he picks the baby up and drops him into a pit of spiders without a second thought. The baby immediately starts crying, and I probably would too if I was surrounded by spiders, but Clevites assures him that he's safe. The spiders in that pit only eat poop, so he dropped him in there to get cleaned up, but that doesn't make it any less scary. Even after he pulls him back up, he won't stop crying, and Clevites is starting to get sick of all the constant wailing. But as a dark beast lord, he can't go back on his decision, so he's going to have to see this through to the end. But to make sure the baby survives, he's going to need a human to look after it, so he walks over to the heroes he killed to see if any of them can be useful. Moments later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself staring at the sky, but she clearly remembers getting killed, so she wonders if this is the afterlife. However, once she sees Clevites, she realizes she's still in his cave. She instinctively reaches for her sword, but Clevites tells her he already threw all the weapons along with the bodies of her allies down into the ravine. However, she looked like she'd be useful, so he decided to revive her. Right now, Alicia is basically a walking corpse, and the only reason she can move is because of the dark energy that he imbued her with, but that's enough explaining for now, so he tells Alicia to make herself useful and give him some milk. It takes a moment for her to register what Clevites just asked her to do, but he isn't joking, and this isn't a request either because he really needs that milk, so he uses his powers to force Alicia to comply. However, after several minutes of suckling, Clevites finally realizes this isn't working. Alicia tells him it obviously wouldn't work because she's never had a baby before and she doesn't understand why someone like Clevites would even want to keep a baby alive in the first place. Clevites doesn't intend to explain his reasons to her, but since Alicia can't provide milk, he is going to need her to be useful in other ways. The baby won't die as long as Clevites keeps giving it energy, but it will be perpetually hungry, so he asks Alicia if there's any other way to get milk. Alicia can't disobey Clevides's command, so she tells him that you will need to hire a nursing mother to feed the baby, but to do that you would have to go to a human town, and with his current form he's guaranteed to cause a panic, so he decides to take a human form so he can blend in. He doesn't have much to go off, so he decides to take the form of the baby's mother and says he will be called Kren, while the baby's name will be Luna. Kren tells Alicia to lead the way to the nearest village, but before that they need to stop so Alicia can wash Luna's blanket, but while she's washing it, she realizes the blanket has the Haydn royal crest on it. Meanwhile, back in what's left of Haydn, the news of what happened has spread, so a scout was sent to inspect the damage. He can't believe that a single dark beast was able to cause all this destruction, but this is exactly why he thought it would be too reckless to attack one of the beast lords. And the timing couldn't have been worse, because the day of the attack was the day the crown princess was supposed to flee the kingdom with her son. Back by the river, Alicia confronts Kren and asks if he knew that Luna was from the royal family when he took the baby. Kren has no idea what she's talking about, so Alicia points out that the cloth Luna was wrapped in had the royal emblem on it and only members of the royal family can use it. Now that Kren thinks about it, the woman he got Luna from was crushed under the rubble of the castle, so it makes sense that Luna would be a member of the royal family. But that doesn't really change Kren's plans. Alicia asks what he means by rubble of the castle, so Kren bluntly tells her that he destroyed Haydn and killed the king last night. Alicia can't believe Haydn was really destroyed, but Kren reminds her that they were the ones who attacked him first. Kren doesn't think it's a big deal, but Alicia says it's a really big deal, because if Kren really wiped out Haydn, then Luna must be the last member of the royal family, and that means tons of people are going to be coming after him. Kren asks why, so Alicia explains that only members of the Haydn royal family are able to use the special forging techniques used to make the Haydn weapons. But immediately after she says that, she realizes she gave away too much information. Kren hadn't given much thought to what he wants to do with Luna till now, but if he's really that important, then Kren wouldn't mind making him the new king of the humans. That way, Kren would be able to control everything from behind the scenes and crush the humans once and for all if they step too far out of line. But right now, they still need to get some milk for Luna, so he tells Alicia to get moving. Alicia still doesn't know why Kren is so attached to Luna, but she is certain that if anything were to happen to him, he would probably kill every last human on the continent, so Alicia needs to protect him at all costs. A few hours later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself chained up in the back of a carriage. Kren is glad to see that she's finally awake, so he calmly informs her that they were captured a little while ago, but Kren doesn't really feel like doing anything about it since Luna is sleeping right now. Alicia, on the other hand, is very concerned, mostly because she doesn't understand how the soldiers managed to subdue Kren so easily. She asks him if he is as weak as a regular human when he is in this form, but Kren tells her that's not it. He still has all his powers, but this is the first time he has ever taken a human form, so he had no idea that a human skull is so fragile. Anyway, he says that now that he is aware of his body's weakness, no one will be able to catch him by surprise again. Alicia is glad to hear that, but if Kren is already back to full strength, Alicia asks why he hasn't broken them out of here already. Kren tells her that right now he is acting the part of an ordinary human, and until he has successfully made Luna king, he doesn't want to reveal his true identity. Besides, part of the reason Kren is doing all this is so he can learn about human nature, so he is interested in seeing the more sinister side of humanity. On that note, he doesn't really understand what's going on here, so he asks Alicia to explain things to him. Alicia tells Kren that they were attacked by bandits, the lowest of the low in society. And from the way things look right now, the bandits intend to sell all the survivors to a slave trader. Kren asks how strong these bandits are meant to be, and as far as humans go, Alicia says they aren't that strong. They will resort to dirty tricks without hesitation, so they are really hard to deal with. Alicia assures Kren that most humans are nowhere near as scummy as bandits, so he shouldn't base his opinion of humanity off them. Eventually, they arrive at the bandits' base, and all the captives are told to get moving. One of the men refuses to let himself be sold into slavery, so he tries making a run for it. But with his arms shackled and his legs weighed down, he isn't very fast. The bandits notice him trying to escape, so one of them takes a knife out and throws it into the man's back, killing him in an instant. The other bandit then announces that anyone who tries to run away or disobey them will meet the same fate, and all the remaining captives are so terrified that no one can bring themselves to fight back. Kren finds this whole dynamic intriguing, but before he and Alicia could continue walking, one of the bandits comes over and tells Alicia she needs to follow him. Kren lets them take Alicia since he still wants to see how all this will play out, and all of a sudden, a woman yells at him for not working. Since Kren is technically a slave now, he decides to play along and goes over to see her since she called for him. But as soon as she sees that he's holding a baby, she starts calling for a woman named Nell. Nell is the poor slave who's forced to do all the hard work at the tavern and she's a bit clumsy, so when Carm calls her name, she ends up falling over. Carm yells at Nell for dropping all the sheets on the floor, and Nell apologizes, but that aside, Carm tells Nell that she will be in charge of looking after this boy's baby, and as soon as Nell sees Luna, her eyes light up because she really likes babies. Meanwhile, Alicia is brought to the office of the bandits' vice captain, Vroko, but Vroko yells at the two of them for not calling him boss. The other bandits think he's just joking around, but Vroko says he's serious, and if they refuse to acknowledge him as their boss, then he's going to have to let his pet, Betty, loose. Alicia is shocked that Vroko managed to acquire a troll monster from the west, and she's even more shocked by the fact that he just trained it as a loyal pet. Moving on to business, Vroko pulls out the bag of gems that Alicia was carrying when the bandits captured her. He knows that these gems can only be found in Luna Mountain, but that place is the territory of Clevitis, one of the four lords of dark beasts, so there's no way an ordinary person would have been able to acquire or even get close to the area. He also knows that the Kingdom of Haydn recently sent out a squad of heroes to battle Clevitis, but the reports say that the heroes all failed. Vroko also happens to know that one of the heroes was a woman who looks an awful lot like Alicia. He mentions how Clevitis destroyed the Kingdom of Haydn after the failed hero attack, and it was a real tragedy for everyone involved. But for the Raven Bandit group, it was the best news they could hope for. Vroko then pulls out a red blade, and Alicia is stunned because she can't believe someone like him possesses a monohiterate sword. Vroko boasts about how swords made from this metal grant the user incredible strength, but he has never actually felt that surge of power because the one in his hand right now is a fake, since members of the royal family are the only ones who can make real magic swords. He tells Alicia that their bandit group sells two things, slaves and fake magic swords, since most people are too stupid to tell the difference. The rumors say that all the members of the royal family died at the hands of Clevitis, and if that turns out to be true, then the price for magic swords is going to skyrocket in no time. He is sure that the 13 regalia which were handcrafted by the king before his death would fetch a high price, but all of them were reportedly lost in the battle against Clevitis. However, with Alicia under his command, Vroko thinks he can find the regalia and sell them to make a huge profit, so he tells the two to make her lead them to the regalia first thing in the morning, and after that, they are free to do what they want with her. Meanwhile, Klein is diligently playing the role of a servant at the tavern. Nell is busy feeding Luna, so he has no reason to cause any trouble, but a few moments later, a bandit comes over and yells at Nell to get him some more beer. Nell puts Luna down and goes to get the beer, but even though she's doing what he asked of her, the bandit still kicks her in the back. After that, another bandit yells for Klen to bring him some meat, so Klen does as instructed and serves the bandit the meat with no complaint. The bandits are surprised that Klen isn't trying to disobey them at all, and they think he's going to make a great slave, but Carm still thinks there's something creepy about him. From the horn on his head, she assumed that Klen must have some Auberite blood in him, but his skin is way too pale for that, and his eyes seem way too cold for a regular boy. At the same time, Nell is minding her own business and carrying the beer when all of a sudden, one of the bandits intentionally sticks out his foot to trip her. Nell falls over and shatters the beer kegs on the ground, so the bandit starts acting like this is her fault and drag her outside to be punished. The bandits just enjoy seeing Nell in pain, so after beating her up, they casually start walking home as usual. Klen then uses his shadows to devour their bodies so there's no evidence of their deaths. After that, he finds Nell, and he asks her to lend him her milk because Luna is hungry again. Nell doesn't really understand what's going on, but she agrees to feed Luna, and while Luna is eating, Klen says he has a few questions he would like to ask Nell. He wants to know who she is and why she is with the bandits, so Nell begins explaining her backstory. She was born in the pirate camp, and although she never knew who her father was, she can clearly remember her mother. Things were never good for them, and from what Nell can remember, her mother was constantly mistreated by the bandits, but no matter how bad it got, she always endured it for Nell's sake. However, around the time Nell turned 12, her mother suddenly disappeared. Nell has no idea whether she died or managed to escape, but once her mother was gone, the bandits turned their attention to Nell instead and started hurting her for fun. As a result, Nell has lost most of her teeth, and she can only hear out of one of her ears now. Things got a little better for her when Carm took her in, and since then, the bandits stopped targeting Nell for their sick games. Plus, now she actually has a job to do. She makes lots of milk, so she can fill the stomachs of starving babies. Klen thinks Nell's story is intriguing, but from what Alicia told him, one has to have a child before they can produce milk, so he asks Nell where her child is. Nell's expression becomes sullen as she explains that she doesn't have one because it was a stillbirth. When Carm initially broke the news to her, Nell fell into a deep depression, and she honestly wished she would die at that point, but when she opened her eyes the next morning, she found a random baby suckling on her for milk. She knew the baby would starve if left on its own, so she let him drink as much as he wanted, and after that, more babies were given to her to feed, which is how she became the resident wet nurse. That's why even though her life hasn't been great, she wants to do her best to make sure that babies that need her milk are happy. Clan has heard enough, so he thanks Nell for telling him her story and asks her to come with him. He wants to hire her as Luna's wet nurse, and while he doesn't trust humans in general, he can tell that Nell is a good person. Nell says she's happy to receive such an offer, but she doesn't think Clan can really get out of here because he is a slave just like her, so she politely turns down his offer. Meanwhile, a few of the bandits are leading Alicia along a rope bridge, and once she realizes she's being led to a flooded mine shaft, she gets a really bad feeling. Down at the bottom of the mine, she sees a man walking up to the edge of the pier with a hook in his hands. The bandits all laugh because they know what's about to happen, but even though it's clear that he's being set up, the man still plans to go through with it because the bandits promised they would let him and his wife go if he retrieves the treasure at the bottom of the lake. The man dives in and begins swimming down to the bottom of the lake, but Alicia yells at him to get out of there immediately because according to the legends, this shaft is full of monsters. Moments later, those monsters jump out of the water with the man in their jaws and proceed to devour him right in front of his devastated wife. Alicia is sickened by what she just witnessed, but the bandits seem like they really enjoyed watching that man get ripped to pieces. The monsters in the water are called Arvensis, and they showed up during the Great Flood 300 years ago, and now they are confined to the water of these mines. Even Hero Cordwar, the strongest hero of his generation, was no match against them. And that was when there was still solid land to fight on, but now that mine is completely flooded, it's practically impossible to defeat the Arvensis. The magic sword that the old hero used was called Stream Splitter, and Alicia assumes that's the treasure the bandits told that man to go retrieve. But even though they promised him freedom in exchange for risking his life, the bandits never had any intention of letting him live even if he had managed to come back alive somehow. She calls them irredeemable scumbags, but the bandits tell her she's in no position to talk to them like that when her hands are bound, her feet are shackled, and they are on a bridge hundreds of meters in the air. There are even a dozen more bandits waiting to get the chance to torture her all night long, and Fido is particularly excited to make her scream. Given the situation, Alicia doesn't have many options left, and she was really hoping she wouldn't have to rely on Clevetess's curse, but it looks like she has no choice now. She immediately dislocates her shoulder and rotates her arms over her head to smash Fido's head between the shackles and make him cut the bridge's rope with his blade. This sends the two of them tumbling to the rocky mine below, and there is a disturbing crack sound as Alicia's body hits the floor, killing her instantly. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.